Hi, everybody. Andrea Fair here with Flying Free Ministries. As you know, we are doing an interview series on freedom in chronic illness. And I have a wonderful, beautiful warrior here, Amy Martinez. And I'm so excited that she was willing to share with us. She actually used to be my roomie way back in the day. And so that makes it extra special. So thanks so much for coming, Amy.
Thanks for having me, Andrea.
Betcha. Could you share with us a bit of your journey?
Okay, well, my journey with chronic illness, it's, well, what I have is PCOS as well as autoimmune issues. What's known is that I have Hashimoto's. So they kind of go in combination together often, especially if you have PCOS that you're kind of not treating or not aware of. It can often lead to Hashimoto's. So
Wow.
that's kind of my starting point.
Yeah, yeah. And did you discover one, and then when you discovered one, you discovered there was a combo, or how did you get diagnosed, I guess, is the bottom line.
Well, for me, I wasn't diagnosed too long ago. 2014, we were having fertility issues. And so through a couple of doctors here, we discovered one day they were doing testing and they asked us if we knew that I had PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. Sorry for those of you who don't know it. Which to me was a shock because I had had a number of health issues, not since I was, 34, but since I was a teenager, and a number of doctors had just dismissed it as saying that it's normal. And so the only time it came up was when we started having fertility issues and we started looking into it. And then just through a bit of studying and a combination of some other issues that were happening, then we got tested for Hashimoto's as well. I have other relatives in my family who also have it. So that's why we kind of started in that area of testing. So,
Wow. Wow.
mhm.
Yeah, that can be the challenge. Hey, is when something is off, or a different department is not quite working, and then it's like, oh my word, how does this even work? Bodies are complex, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So in your journey, I know it's recent and raw, and um, has there been a growing level of acceptance, or has there been a specific event that kind of helped you in the process of accepting this condition?
I think for me, it's growing and probably still growing. There's definitely days where I'm still like, oh, I hate this. My husband eats something and I'm like, hey, does your stomach hurt? And he's like, no, I feel great. And I'm like, I feel so sick.
Oh,
Right. And so eh, in those moments, I'm often just, it's heavy. And so it's still a process of saying, okay, I can't eat that. And so I need to find other things that I enjoy. But it has been a process even to get to this point. We were pretty, well, I would say I was pretty shocked when I found out because I had done some reading about different conditions, uh, just that were similar to the symptoms I was having. And PCOS and Hashimoto's had both come up. And so when I found out, I knew a little bit about it and I knew that it was going to be the long haul. It wasn't just something that would go away, but it was something that I would have to make many adjustments to feel good, right? To feel normal on an everyday basis. So it's definitely been a process and still continues to be one.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for myself, my health issues were, I mean, obviously there's so many losses involved with them, and sometimes they are like, I don't know, I feel like I didn't connect them as losses until after I got some grief counseling. And then now I'm like, oh my gosh, so every single time I didn't get to do what everybody else was doing, that was a loss. And every single time it was obvious that I am in agony, yeah, from what I ate and nobody else is. And that those are definitely triggers. So it's hard when there's many of them, and then the acceptance of it is like, yeah, it's like, there's a lot to accept here. I don't know if I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of going with that, like because of my training, you know, that I'm studying to be a marriage and family therapist. When you look at grief, and when you realize that there's grief upon grief upon grief upon grief, it becomes compound. And so it takes a toll on you, and it can actually take even longer to kind of grieve those processes, and the losses that you have as you discover you have them. Right. And so, yeah, I think it's a process for many people over time, because I mean, something for me now that doesn't bother me, maybe in 10 years, I might look back and say, this is hard for me. Right.
Yeah. And
So
I've noticed this thing in my own journey, um, as I guess you get more healing as you go, right? Even in your grief process. Um, there'll be triggers like all of a sudden with COVID and homeschooling. Well, I homeschooled when I was sick, and so all of a sudden it was like it just totally flipped me back to, oh man, how am I gonna do this? I don't know if I can. And it's like, okay, wait, whoa, you are better now. Blah, blah, blah. Like so much, the kids are huge. Like there's so many factors that have changed, but it was
yeah.
just like needing to acknowledge that, oh yeah, that was hard and we made it through. But that's really valuable, because I know lots of people with chronic illness have multiple conditions, and I know for myself, it's just validating to know that this is a compound loss, and it's okay. It's important to name it, and to give yourself time, and the reality that, yeah, you're always growing in acceptance. It's not just a off the list. Yeah, let's do this. It's not like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I've recently heard a saying, your breaking point is your breakthrough point. Does that resonate with you at all? Or do you feel, I don't know, what does that make you think of when you hear that saying?
um I don't know. I feel like my journey has had many breaking points, and some are big and some are smaller. And I think for me, like when I hear that, um, each of those times, there's things that I learn. Like a breaking point for me is it's kind of that grieving point, right? Where you realize something, and then you grieve it, but you also learn from it. But I think it's a building. For me, it's building. I build on build on build. I come from a Christian background, and so part of my view is that God uses those hard things. We don't live this life that is, how do I put it? We still have to face many of the same things that every other human has to face, even if you are a Christian. And in those things, the hope in the things that I learn is that God is using it. So it might be something that's really hard and really poopy, but God takes it and teaches me something from that and strengthens me in different ways. And even if I look at like the degree that I'm stepping into, there were things that I was terrified of when I started it, and just being with people and worrying about, would I be able to understand, or would I be able to validate their experience and comfort them, and also walk with them as they journey through healing and finding ways to live with different mental health issues. And now some of the things I've gone through, I'm like, I see it from a different perspective. And I see how God has been with me, and how God sits with me, and how he teaches me new things through that you can make it through a lot of hard things. And not only that, but having community around you as well. Right. Having that big group and people with different experiences at different ages, God has brought those people along as well. And it helps through those breaking points, but they're also growing points.
I like that.
So.
I like the concept of a breaking point is your building point, right? Because in some ways, especially I think with chronic illness, there's not like a breakthrough in the sense of like, oh, and now I'm good to go. It's more of a like, this is an endurance, this is a marathon. So it's more like I'm going to choose to build and grow throughout it versus it control my life, even though it has many controlling features.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Good mindset.
Mm.
Wow. So you kind of went into the next question too. What are strategies that have helped you along the way? You were talking about just acknowledging your walk with God is just a paramount importance just for surviving the things you've been through, as
Yeah.
well as community. You talked about a community that is diverse, and that intrigues me because I know in my own journey, it sometimes just felt like, oh my goodness, if I have to try to explain to one person how my body, I look fine, but I'm not fine, I'm
Mm.
gonna lose my mind. So tell me more about what your community looks like and how they help you with um, have freedom in your chronic illness.
My community is very diverse, and it is spread out between multiple cultures. um, it's a number of people that God has brought into my life, just kind of, I mean, from childhood till now. But it's amazing to me the things that they've walked through, that they have been able to give us perspective and to be a comfort and just journey with us. So, I have a number of friends who struggled with chronic illness, different types of chronic illness, and they found different things have been helpful, um, which is really encouraging to me, because it can feel very lonely at times. And you feel like, well, it's just me, or it's just my body, or somebody does something and it works for them, but it doesn't work for me. But being around many people reminds me that it's very individualistic, because we have our own set of genetics and life. But there's so many things that we can learn from other people, and not just, techniques, but also attitude, and, taking that next step, as opposed to trying to jump way ahead where it's just not realistic. So, and on top of that, I have multiple cultures, and different cultures deal with things in different ways, which I've been very thankful for, because sometimes I've just needed someone to be there and to not have to process, and other times I've needed to process and talk about things. And so that diversity has been really helpful. Um, I mean, this could be a whole another interview, but
Yes, I have to write that one down for a different time. Very intriguing. Yeah.
But yeah, and different age groups. I do have some people who have gone through similar losses like us, with similar health issues. And that has been helpful too, because I mean, one person in particular I'm thinking of, they're in their 80s, and their life journey has been in a different country, in a different place, and but it's nice to have someone that far along who says, you're gonna make it, kid, right?
Totally. Oh
Yeah.
oh, it's true. Yeah, we need those gray-haired warriors who have gone before and are like, I know it sucks, but there's, and
Yeah.
like you said, you even pick up different, maybe not a healing from them, but comfort and encouragement, and even just that um, desire to do what they've done. It makes me think of we were at my grandpa's funeral, and for those of you who don't know, I have foster brothers, and my foster brother's grandma was at my grandpa's funeral, and she was just glowing, like legit glowing, and I was like, Grandma, what's going on with your face? Not quite, but and she's like, I'm like, you're just glowing, like what's happening? And she's like, it's just Jesus. And I'm like, I believe you. She's been through so much trauma, like so much trauma, and yet she could just still radiate Christ. And I know that that is what he does, as we choose to let him take our breaking points and make them into building points. He just keeps shining through us, whether everything gets fixed or not at all, or no matter what happens. So wow. When you started, oh sorry, when did you say that you began to feel a sense of freedom, even though you had chronic illness? Like even with the chronic illness, when did it kind of like to have that sense of like, okay, I'm gonna make it, or oh, I'm accepting this better, or whatever?
I think it's been a process for me. understanding what it was. So like in 2014, when our doctor started to tell us, okay, this is what you have, that it, as shocking as it was, it gave me a starting point for learning. So before it had been a general learning, but at that point, then I could actually, I could start, researching different things. I could read books. I could join groups online. I could talk to friends. And so knowing that actually helped me begin that process of accepting it. Because here were all these things that I couldn't do anything about. And then all of a sudden, knowing it made me feel like, okay, I can't control that, but I can control how I deal with it. And I can explore, right? The gentler I was on myself, the more I could say, okay, I have this. Can I do something about it? What can I do? And so it's not an easy process or a fast process, but it was a starting point. Yeah. And that I found that really, really helpful. And it also helps ground me again when I start to feel like, oh, this sucks. I can go back on some of those things that I've learned, and just know that I'm not starting from the beginning. There are things I can do, right? Just those reminders that I can still have a fulfilling, joyful life, even if I can't control these other things, right? So
I think you touched on something profound, and that is that freedom is a choice, right? We can choose to embrace what is ours, and we can choose to say, well, forget it, I'm not doing this. And so good job choosing to walk in the freedom that is focusing on what you can do versus what you can't do. And that makes sense too, that the starting point for you can gain that knowledge. And I know you're a researcher for sure. When we were in Bible school, it's like Amy's like reading, and I'm like, oh, I just kind of skimmed and picked what I needed to know. Is that okay? But anyways, she's our in-depth research girl. So that is a way to use your giftings to help you in your journey. That makes a lot of sense. And for others, I know that you're passionate about serving others in that. So that's beautiful. Yeah. Something that, what else did you say that triggered something? Enjoy. I think just, the choices that you have in that, what you are able to do. I know for myself, there's definitely that lean towards like, I haven't even progressed anywhere, or my quality of life sucks, or especially when you've had a lot of rough days in a row. And I know, I'm sure, I mean, your condition is different than mine was, but I remember my mom telling me, you should track your days. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, not doing it. And eventually, a billion years later, I'm like, maybe I'll track my days. And it was so good because it helped me actually have a better frame of reference for those days when I was so exhausted. And like, I don't think I've ever walked around the block before in my life. And I could be like, well, actually I did last Tuesday. And so I had that frame of reference for what's a good day, or how many good days or bad days I'd had. And another thing that was interesting was, when you kind of start to know the lies, again, I'm a woman of faith as well. And when you start to know the lies that Satan is throwing at you regarding your health or your mindset, then that was really powerful for me, because I went to, as you know, went to Mexico for treatment also. And when I would come home, there was always like this transition was hard, and getting back into the swing. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it was my first trip or my second trip, I'm like, these are the same 5 lies, like every single time. So I finally just wrote them down and was like, okay, no, I am not being lazy. I have a legitimate thing. Okay, no, and whatever. And it just was really empowering, because I could use less mental energy reframing it all the time, or analyzing the same thing. You know me, analyzing the same thing 5,000 times. I'm like, okay, that's enough. So how about for you? Have you found that there's certain lies that Satan will just try to push at you, that you are like, that's it, like the gig's up, I know that these are the top 3, or that sound at all familiar to your story? Or
yeah, absolutely. There's definitely certain ones. One of the big ones is my worth as a woman. because it's affected our fertility journey. It affects my energy levels. Sometimes I feel like my hormones are out of control, and it's like, why am I crying this moment and angry the next, and then being like, ha ha ha, 20 minutes later. And so it's been a journey to kind of hash that out, because there were a number of things, I would say, that I had spiritually believed that wasn't true. And so these lies were particularly, they like to stick around in a really ugly way. And so understanding that through some of the breaking points, and battling it out, saying, no, maybe I didn't get enough sleep last night. Maybe it was sugar. Maybe it was, it's just a gray day and I actually, need to use my little therapy lamp in the morning. And so understanding that has helped me, but then also it's helped me like in my faith, because it sent me back to what is biblically true. What does God think about me? What is my worth based in? And I think that's, even if you're not a person of faith, self-worth, I think it can become a huge battle, I think, in this. And that leads to all sorts of difficulties in mental health, which can actually, it can become ingrained for you, and it can actually be something that leads to mental illness, which will complicate everything else. So, yeah.
I just did a podcast interview this morning, and the lady was asked, we touched on depression, and because of my story too, I mentioned that I struggled with depression, especially in the throes of having babies and homeschooling, and we moved houses and built a house, and anyway, and I found myself in that dark place, and yeah, because my worth wasn't connected to what I could do and not do, and how I'd expected to live out my life, and it wasn't happening. I ended up with having suicidal thoughts cross my mind, and enough that it was worrisome. And and it was definitely going back to God. And it's not like I wasn't talking to him about my depression and whatever, but it was, he gave me a healing moment when I was just like at the end of the end, and so covered in shame at even just what I was feeling. And I wrote about it in my book, but it was just like such a powerful encounter, because I felt so much shame that I would even be at the place where I was suicidal, and he was just clothed me in love and mercy, and was just like, hello, like that is not at all what I'm thinking about you. And so I hear what you're saying, that once we start believing and choosing, and that was part of my journey, is I have to actually believe what God says about me. I can't just read it and be like, whatever, like that's not going to help me at all. But when I actually say, this is for me and I'm choosing to accept what you have, then that's where I guess I gained freedom and traction in my chronic illness. So that's important stuff. So do you have anything you'd like to say to those who are waiting to be diagnosed?
Oh, hang in there. I could say a lot. I've had different treatments for different things in 3 different countries. And so looking at healthcare systems, if you're in Canada, I'd say hang in there. If your doctor isn't as helpful, find another doctor, gather your community around you, whoever that is, if that's friends and family right there, or if that's support online, if that's coaches, if that's, a therapist, whoever. Surround yourself with the people who will help you seek out that diagnosis, because our system, I don't want this to get too long. The system in Canada does have a certain sequence that it goes through. And because it's socialized, they don't go beyond that ever. And so find a doctor that will start to look at it, not just if your tests are coming back showing that there is something, but a doctor who will work with you for your symptoms. Because you can be near markers when it comes to blood tests, but if you have symptoms as well, and it's disrupting your life, find the doctors that will help you. If you're in the US, I mean, that's a different story. Same thing, but I think there's a little more freedom with the healthcare systems depending on where you are. But hang in there, keep looking. There are doctors who will help you to get the help that you actually need. And you're not crazy. You do have symptoms. These things are not normal. I was told, I mean, I've had symptoms since I was a teenager, and I was told for years by doctors, well, that's just normal. Eat less salt, lose some weight. There were things that, I mean, if I had known when I was 16 that I may not have gotten to the point where I am now at this age as quickly. But just hang in there, keep doing it. Keep seeking out help, and get the supports you need to kind of help you keep going, because you will find someone who believes you, and you will get the help at some point. You'll find things out too in your life, the things you can do without medical help, right? There's a lot with diet changes, other supplements, vitamins. Look at it as a holistic approach. So then you can also, that will help you keep going as well as you seek out medical help. So.
Totally. And I also wanted to add, just let yourself take breaks when you need them too. Because the journey of diagnosis is, I think it's for 15 years, and we didn't get my diagnosis till maybe year 13. And so that was huge. But like Amy said, that once I started to eventually believe, like, I'm actually not crazy, like I really can't walk, like that, then there was that validation that came along the way. But it was also because I kept on seeking out help. And like you said too, holistic is good, because then all the different departments are getting help. And that there is, I guess I'd also maybe say that if there's like Amy had said, that different, like your conditions that you actually have, like Hashimoto's and PCOS, they had come up in research before and you'd kind of seen them, but that it wasn't until later they were diagnosed. And similar story, I remember my brother-in-law actually giving me a book on chronic fatigue way back, like 2004, like right at the beginning. And I was like, he was so cute, because he's just like, I know this might not, like, I know that I'm not a doctor or anything, but like I saw this book and I thought of you, and do whatever you want with it. Like, you can burn it, I don't care. And so I graciously said thank you. And then I didn't burn it, but I gave it away. And I'm like, this is not what I'm doing. I'm not doing this, basically. Only to fast forward 10 years later, and the doctor's like, yeah, so you have chronic fatigue syndrome. And I don't think I was wrong to do what I did. I think it was just where I was at, and there wasn't maybe enough evidence yet in my thinking. And so, but it's not wrong to go back to diagnoses that you've maybe heard of or semi-fit earlier, and just to dig into them a little bit deeper sometimes too. So
yeah, sorry, just to add to that too, you might not have all the symptoms that the medical system will diagnose you with, but that may be early symptoms of it, and dealing with those symptoms early and trying different things may actually delay you from getting things, from it progressing, right? Or getting to a point where your body is really like taxed. And so you don't have to ignore the symptoms, even if you're not diagnosed. If you see them. I thought mine were normal, right? So I basically did nothing. I was just like, gosh, when I eat this ice cream, I feel so terrible, but I'm going to eat it because it's great. And my body really loves it, but it feels bad, right? Like, so I had an appetite for it, but not a stomach for it. But I had no idea what it was. I thought I was, I don't know. I thought I was just having a stomach ache, or I had been told by doctors, you're just getting older. And so that didn't help either.
Great. Thank you, doctor.
Yeah, I wasn't even 30 at that point.
I've had doctors tell me, your tests are all perfect. You're good to go. And I'm like,
Mm,
are you serious right now? I can't actually physically walk out of this room at a normal pace. And
yeah.
yeah, they do their best, but in the end, we have to do our part of. I had to work through my forgiveness side with all my different medical people that were like,
Yeah.
yeah, so you need to see a shrink because it's all in your head, girl, and whatever
Mm,
else they threw my way that was like, excuse me.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with seeing a psychologist for sure, but it's not okay to just say someone's symptoms are not in the
Yeah.
physical world, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes me think of it would be wise to keep a record of the appointments you've gone to and the why. And it sounds like lots of work. Maybe I can create a template that people can just have a
Mm,
binder with their what they need to collect, because I know eventually when we did switch doctors and go to a different country for treatment, I suddenly was a wreck and had nothing because I just hadn't even crossed my mind. So a beautiful friend helped me, and we
mm,
photocopied a serious amount of paperwork from the medical clinic, and it was helpful for the
mm.
next phase. But that is something maybe moving forward to make sure you're tracking your symptoms. And I like what you said, Amy, about
Yeah.
letting the doctor treat your symptoms, because I think sometimes our focus is so much like we need to get the root, we need to get to the root. But the reality is like the symptoms are telling you something. Like, so if we just overlook them, that doesn't make sense either, right? So it's like you have to look at, it's not the either or approach, it's a both approach, I think. So
Yeah. For sure, because being able, like say for me, being able to get a good night's sleep was really important because I was waking up multiple times. And so, but being able to get a good night's sleep will also make me feel better.
yeah.
And so it's kind of like I was thinking of this when he would ask me to do it, that for for many illnesses, it's not just like a circle. This goes to this, goes to this, goes to this. It's like you have all these things. Well, I'll put it in a circle, but they're interacting, and these ones are interacting, and these ones are they're all interacting with each other on different levels. And so being aware that you can treat a symptom and you can be working on the root,
Mm.
and it can be medically treated, and it can be holistic, and it can be mental health, and it can be physical health, and it can be spiritual health, right? So it's this big giant system interacting that changing little things one at a time is helpful. It is going to help you.
And I think that's also the beauty of being a woman of faith, is that we have backup, right? Like we have Holy Spirit to say, okay, so do I do this treatment or not? Like when I started taking the supplement I'm on that has changed my life, I was in that place of restlessness. Like I'd like to try, I'm taking all these natural supplements, and can't tell except for a couple of them that were helping me. And so I feel like God brought me to that place of unrest so that I was willing, because I tried a billion other things and spent $1 billion, not really, but
Yeah.
and so I had gotten to that place where I was willing to try another thing, and then it ended up being the right thing. So I think that is valid too, just to be like, hey, God, show me what is my next step to take. And if it's to just walk it out for a few more months, then help me do that. And if it's actually to seek someone else that's new, then help me do that, because it's exhausting. I mean, it's exhausting being sick, period, end of story. But then
Yeah.
the navigating of it is like, oh my word, can someone just drive this thing? So let
Yeah.
Holy Spirit do that for you.
Yeah.
So what would you like to say to those who are tired of the daily battle?
I don't know. Sometimes I get tired of the daily battle too. Sometimes I don't want to eat properly. Sometimes I want to stay up. Sometimes I want to skip vitamins and things that could be helpful. Or sometimes things come up and it interrupts it. But I think overall, this is a simple plotting, like you mentioned before, that this is a marathon. And so it's one step at a time. You don't have to get there super fast. You just keep plotting. Have it, like, it's important to have the right people with you. Like you said, there's people who've helped you along this way. If you have spiritual beliefs, taking those into consideration, right? For me, making sure I stay close to God is really important. That means spending time in the Word, spending time in prayer, and that that meditation is part of the way I stay healthy. Right. So just hang in there, keep plotting. I mean, talk to Andrea if you need help. Talk to your doctors, go to online support groups, right? Facebook has a number of ones that I joined for different reasons along this journey. And I find it helpful just to know I'm not alone. Yeah. And there's people there who can share a bazillion things that would be really hard for you to learn or overwhelming for you to have to learn. So it can be a place of rest almost, and just finding a bit of your clan.
Yeah, I believe you. Yep. Yeah. To find something that, if you actually are struggling with chronic fatigue, I just thought of this right now. A few of us have created a group online on Facebook, a private group. And the lady who started it, she's just like, I've been looking for a chronic fatigue group and I can't find one, like, which is weird to me. She's like, because I can find them for all these other all these other conditions. But so that has been something that she started up because she just felt like, well, this is needed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where were you? But anyways, that's just, everyone's journey is different. For me, it's so funny because Facebook became my group because I didn't even know about it. I was at home. I saw someone in the mall one day and she's like, why aren't you on Facebook? And I'm like, what's Facebook? And she's like, oh, Andrea, let me help you. And this is like embarrassing, like in the 2000s. But anyhow, but I was able to hop on there, even though I had to do it through my big old clunky laptop. And that was just like, oh my goodness, there's people outside these four walls. Praise God. Because when you are trapped in your body, you need to have a way of leaving. That sounds bad, leaving it, but like expanding your world, right? So that has been helpful for me. And I think like what you had said before too, just to, once you acknowledge what is true, that yes, I have a condition, maybe I don't know the name of it right now, but obviously something is not okay, then to be able to give yourself the grace you would to somebody else who had a condition, right? And that leaves space to, I don't know, it just gives you more energy to continue because you aren't trying so hard to be somebody else, or pushing yourself so hard to keep going, I think too, maybe.
Yeah. And that's a good point, that you're walking on this journey together, but each of you is you're moving your body forward, right? So your journey doesn't have to be exactly like somebody else's journey. Yeah. So you can give yourself a break, that it's not working out the same way, or you're not at the same point as someone further along. So,
and you're allowed to be where you're at. I know sometimes people don't understand what your boundaries are and why, but they also aren't measuring their days by energy or by steps or by whatever you have to measure by. And I remember somebody being like, well, if you feel like that, then don't go to that event. I'm like, no, I can't measure that way, or else I would never leave my house. Like you have develop that awareness within yourself of what works for you and where you're at on any given day, because you in the end know yourself the best. And so if you have to say no to an event, or there's too many events in a row or whatever, give yourself permission to be the expert about you, because I think that was empowering for me. And it also gave me a voice to explain to others that, they're like, oh wow, you're like, you're so have so much energy. They're kind of annoyed at me for having energy, which I'm like, do you want me to punch you in the face? But I didn't. And I was able to say kindly, I'm like, well, I slept all day, so I could do this 1 hour. And they were like, oh, and it was just an educational moment, because they needed to know that we're allowed to have energy.
Yeah.
And allowed to have happy moments, and that, maybe I had to work really hard for this one burst of joy. So let me have it.
Yeah.
Amy, and we're just closing up here. Is there anything else you'd like to share, or any gifts that you have been given even during this season of life that has not been easy, that you could share with us?
I think acceptance that life isn't just black and white. There's a lot of gray areas. There's a lot of room to grow. There's a lot to learn. And you can restfully do that. It's not just scurrying to something to get there, to finish it, to complete it, or it's going to be really definitive. But just, yeah, I won't add any more.
That is the lot. I was like, wow, that just do the step you're on. Hey? Mm-hmm. And that
Yeah.
let it be what it will be. And wow.
Yeah. And I feel like, because I am a Christian and I'm also almost working in mental health, I'm near finished, that working from a restful place is actually the best way to grow, is the best way to learn, is the best way to heal, because your body isn't working against itself. Your mind isn't working against itself, because we can have a lot of anxiety saying, I have to learn this, I have to do this, right? But being able to accept and be at rest says, okay, now I can look at this. And instead of it being something that's really traumatic or really too much, it's something that I can honestly look at and say, okay, for me, okay, God, how do I move forward? What steps do you want me to take? What is, extra right now, and what is, like, where does the focus need to be? And it stops the comparison game. I think our world is very big on comparing. And so it just brings a lot of really good opportunities for you.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. Yeah. Just to live out of a restful place and make your decisions out of a restful place, because it will grow rest and peace and even health in your life as you let your body have a break from pushing it too hard to do all the things. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amy. You always bless me, girl. Always just like stretches my brain. I'm like, wow. And then later, for days after, God just continues to use your words to comfort and encourage and bless. And so, I mean, Amy is an integral part of Flying Free Ministries. She was my sounding board like every other day, not quite, but the first couple of years as I was working through writing my book and setting up my branding and things like that. And I would hire her full time if I had money. So thank you for everything, Amy. And Amy is, like she said, moments away from being completed her degree. Can you say the name of it? Because I always get it wrong.
It's a Master of Arts in Marriage and Family Therapy. So I'll be a marriage and family therapist at a master's level. So
wow, that's crazy awesome. And so Lord willing, we will get to do more work with you, Amy, because I know you have tons more information for us in the future. And everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening, and make sure you know that you can email me and we can connect more deeply. Also, if you want to get the other Freedom in Our Chronic Illness interviews, then make sure you sign up for them at the link so you don't have to be trying to find them on Facebook. All right, take care and have a great day.